Talking about your career today as an athletic trainer, are you enjoying sharing your knowledge that you've obtained over the years and sharing it with other people and helping them build their bodies? Is it giving you a lot of personal satisfaction?
Yes, it is. I competed for, up to 10 years, and as you may know yourself, athletic training gets to be a little old as you get older yourself. But now I do enjoy sharing the knowledge that I acquired over the years of my own training with my clients, and it's very, very satisfying.
Mike, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who would like to improve their physiques and their bodies and would want to go to perhaps a trainer. But what should somebody look at when they are looking into getting a trainer? What are some of the qualifications maybe?
Well, not necessarily his muscular development or even his athletic appearance. It's actually very difficult. Presumably the person's going to the gym because he knows little or nothing about training. I think the only way to do it would be to assess his general intelligence level and listen as to how well he explains the principles of productive exercise, as to whether or not he has a grasp of the principles of exercise.
A couple things that I've run across and while I've been training is that people generally want either two types of ways to improve their body. They either want to get more muscle mass or they want to become defined. Talk about a little bit about the different theories between gaining mass, what you should do, and maybe if somebody just wants to remain lean and not really gain any mass.
Good point. As a matter of fact, there are two types of basic training. You can train either for muscle mass or endurance, which tends to burn body fat and keep you lean. For those who want to build muscle mass, the most important principle is that of intensity. The harder you train, the more weight you lift, the more you put into it, the more muscle you'll develop. And those who are looking to just remain lean and not develop muscle, perhaps tone themselves, the intensity factor, the amount of weight they lift is not so important. They don't have to push themselves quite as hard.
I'm curious, when you were competing, did you ever, because a lot of people don't like the appearance of bodybuilders, they think it's kind of grotesque. Was that hard for you to deal with people saying to you, you look hard, you're too big, you're too...
No. As a matter of fact, I was always a bit of a rebel throughout my life, and the thought that I would be different from other people never bothered me, and when I heard that it bothered other people, it even gave me more impetus to continue training.
That's a good philosophy. I'm sure a lot of their negative comments come from jealousy, because
I think so too.
The dedication that requires to look, like when you're competing is just tremendous.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I've talked to many people in the past who claimed initially they didn't like the look of a bodybuilder. Then I would bring them to a physique contest and show them the magazine. Over a period of time, their standards changed. They didn't feel as threatened.
We've got a picture of Mike on the monitor here also.
Look at that picture.
Excuse me, Mike.
That was taken a few years ago, I must say.
But you can see the dedication that would take to look like that. I mean, that's hours and hours and hours of training there.
How many years was that to get to that point?
Well, that was 11 years ago. A photograph taken right before the 1980 Mr. Olympia contest, and I had been training at that point for about 15 years, off and on, but for about 7 years straight through right before that.
That's incredible.
But an important point, Anthony, I did not train for hours and hours every day, and this is an important issue.
Oh, okay.
Contrary to what most bodybuilders do, which is train 2 to 4 hours a day, 7 days a week, to obtain that condition, I trained literally for 30 minutes 4 times a week, 2 hours a week.
Yeah, because the theory that you always hear is that it does require hours and hours to look like that.
The mistaken premise there is that more is better. And the body doesn't necessarily work that way. If 2 hours or 4 hours a day were good, well, why not train 12 hours a day? Training is a form of stress, and up to a certain point in time, exposing the body to stress can be beneficial. But beyond a definite period in time, it can actually be detrimental.
That's interesting.
Let me ask you, amongst the top contenders in the world, or competitors, would everybody be training differently? Do you think, or do people know that less is actually better for them?
No, they don't. The vast majority of people who train it almost exactly the same way, for 2 to 4 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week. There are those who have read my articles and have attended my seminars and tend to be reasonable individuals and train just for 30 to 45 minutes a day, 4 times a week.
Something that I'm always curious about, because I'm a big fan of doing cardiovascular work. Do you advocate that, doing, let's say, an hour of cardiovascular work a day? Does that keep the weight off, or does that tear down?
No, it does not necessarily keep the weight off. Weight control is primarily a matter of calorie balancing. You could do 2 hours a day of aerobics, and if you're eating too many calories, still be getting fat. Another point here that's important is that your weight training can give you the cardiovascular benefit at the same time that it gives you the muscle training benefit. If you're not resting too long between sets and you're sustaining what's called the age-adjusted pulse rate, you will develop a cardiovascular training effect and improve your heart and lungs along with your skeletal muscle tissue.
I've got to ask you, Mike, about one body part in particular that I'm sure a lot of men out there watching will be interested into, is the stomach.
Right.
Now, how do you get a washboard stomach like we saw on that? I'm sure most guys with summer coming up would die for that kind of information.
Well, you definitely don't want to indulge in too much beer like we were talking about before.
Right.
But it's primarily a matter of nutritional control, calorie control. As long as you know what your maintenance level of calories is and you go any number below that, you will lose body fat. Of course, the further you go into a calorie deficit, the more fat you'll lose at a faster rate. And the secondary factor is, of course, physical training, building up the muscle tissue. But even if you are training and building the muscle tissue up and you have the fat, you're still going to appear fat.
Right. Now,
Let me ask you, I know over the last, I think it's about 6 or 7 years in a row now, Lee Haney has won Mr. Olympia or Mr. Universe
Right.
7 years in a row. In your mind, and I know you hear that there is some kind of politics involved, can anybody beat him, first off?
Well, I think there are a number of people who can beat him. Actually, what it boils down to is who's going to be in shape that day. Very often, even the top competitors miss their peak by a little bit. It's true in baseball, true in football. If he misses his peak by 1%, the guy who was second place last year can sneak ahead of him. So Lee Haney is definitely beatable, without a doubt.
Could you give us a couple of names of who you think would be, say, 2 or 3 gentlemen who would have a good shot at it?
Well, there's one guy who stands on the horizon at the moment who I think is going to win next year, and that's Sean Ray. Last year he placed, I think it was 5th or 6th, not really in the top running, but that was only his second Olympia, and along with that he has all the physical requirements in superabundance for winning the Olympia. Besides that, Lee Haney's won 7 in a row, and people are getting a little sick of seeing him in there.
is he maybe living on his reputation alone now more?
Yeah, there is that element. Because bodybuilding is a little bit subjective and is subject to political influence, I think so, yeah.
What about one of the just a quick thing here, one of the theories you hear about people when you turn 50 or 60,
Yeah.
everything falls to your knees, which I know is not true, but could you share something about that with a couple of examples?
Yeah, I think that's one of those misconceptions that's motivated in part by fear and jealousy and a lack of understanding about what bodybuilding really is. Right now there are at least 2 or 3 competitors on the top professional scene who, believe it or not, are in their 60s and winning. About 6 weeks ago, a man named Albert Beckles, at the age of 61, won the Niagara Falls Grand Prix bodybuilding professional contest, beating out guys who were in their 20s. He's been competing for 35 years, so where's his muscles turning to fat? They are not. He's getting better at the age of 61. Not 51, 61.
That's good to know.
And I would bet he'll be doing it at the age of 70.